Just to linger on liberal arts, in 2014, and probably still today, you wrote that liberals are killing the liberal arts.
Yes.
So can you explain?
Yes. The problem with, I'm a political liberal.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the political left is that it has divided between what's called progressives and liberals. Liberals are people of the left who believe in the First Amendment, an absolute First Amendment, and in due process of law. And the problem with what progressives now, in the pursuit of equality, what they view as equality, they're willing to bend those rules. And this movement actually started in Brandeis. It's the critical race theory. It started, Herbert Marcuse was a professor at Brandeis, and he came up with this theory. The theory was this. This is right out of Orwell. In order to create true equality in a society where you have some downtrodden and some who are the Übermenschen, in order to create real equality, you have to reduce the rights of the upper classes and artificially increase the rights of the lower classes. And that will produce, out of unequal treatment, true equality will be attained. This is nonsense. The idea of discrimination producing true equality is nonsense. My view is, as I've said earlier in our discussion, that the way to increase the opportunities for the lower classes is to give them real educations. And until we do that, it's not going to happen. And in order to do that, we have to overcome the problem of the teachers' unions at the elementary and secondary school levels. Until we're willing to do that honestly and improve those schools, we're going to have a problem of a large number of uneducated people who need a boost because we haven't given them proper educations.
What do you think about some of the more controversial faculty in the world? So an example, somebody I've spoken with many times on mic and offline is Jordan Peterson. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work.
Yes.
But he is an outspoken critic of or proponent of free speech on campus, and he's been attacked quite a bit. He's a controversial figure. What's the role of the university to protect the Jordan Petersons of the world?
I think a university has an absolute, not relative, not watered down, absolute obligation to protect the academic freedom of even the most controversial faculty members. You can imagine on a university campus, you have more people who are outliers than you do in the general population.
That's the hope, at least.
Hopefully, yeah. And those outliers have to be protected. They can't be pressured. They can't be fired. They can't be disabled from spewing their views, whether they're considered racist, whether they're considered to be, promote an idea of human society that's considered obnoxious. It doesn't matter if you can't have freedom of thought on the college campuses. Where can you? Then we're lost as a society. We're lost, and as an educational institution. Educational institutions no longer will educate, they will indoctrinate. That we have to avoid at all costs.
And we should also remember that the outlier might also be the only bearer of truth. So in Nazi Germany, speaking against the fascist regime, in communist Soviet Union, speaking against communism, they might hold the key to solving the ailments of that society.
Well, absolutely. And some of the most important discoveries in science, for example,
yes,
were mocked at the beginning. I mean, think of poor Charlie Darwin.
Charlie. I see he is on nickname levels with you. Well, because we're talking about these big topics of sexism, racism, and hate. We should not forget about the smaller topics, which might even have the much bigger impact, which is what you're speaking to, which is outlier ideas in science. So basically, welcoming controversial ideas in science, and by controversial, I mean just stuff that most of the community doesn't agree on. It doesn't actually harm anyone at all. But even then, there's always pressure. One of the things I'm really concerned about is how little power young faculty have. That there's a kind of hierarchy, seniority that universities have, empowered by the administration, where young faculty that come in, they're kind of
pre-tenure.
Yeah. There's a process in chasing tenure where you're kind of supposed to behave, and there's an incentive to kind of fit in and to not be an outcast, and that's a really huge problem, because oftentimes the youth is when the craziest, the biggest ideas, the revolutionary ideas come. And if you're forced to behave and fit in and not speak out, then even in the realm of science, the innovation is stifled.
Well, now you trigger my having to tell you this story.
That you're triggered. This is good.
In the mid-1980s, I decided to take a 4-month sabbatical from my law practice.
Yes.
Professor James Vorenberg, who was at the time dean of the Harvard Law School, heard about it from his wife, Elizabeth Betty Vorenberg, whom I was very friendly with because we were both on the ACLU of Massachusetts board at the time. And so Betty told Jim that Harvey was taking a sabbatical. Jim called Harvey and asked Harvey if he would like to teach a course at the Harvard Law School, because there was nobody who had teaching criminal law from the perspective of somebody who actually was in court, litigated. It was all theoretical. I said, sure, I'll do it. So I taught a semester at Harvard Law School. The student evaluations were fabulous. Why? Because it was really interesting. They were hearing a lawyer who was talking about real cases. I actually brought in a few of my clients to some of the classes. And so Jim called me in and said, Harvey, the students love this course. I'd like to offer you a tenure-track position at the law school. You'd have to give up your law practice. I turned him down. He said, did you just say no? I said, yes, I said no. He said, how come? He says, nobody has ever, in my administration, has ever turned down a tenure-track offer at Harvard Law School. I said, because I could see that I'm not a good fit, that the administrators overrun the place, that faculty members, especially untenured, who are afraid to say things that might not help them in the tenure quest. It's not a good fit for me.
You saw this in the mid-1980s already.
Yes, about 1985. And I went back to my law practice. I did not want to get into this meat grinder that I saw. Actually, I started to see it before the turn of the century because I co-authored the Shadow University in 98. And then co-founded FIRE in 99. I'm an early student of this phenomenon.
What are some other aspects of this, the book, The Shadow University, that we may have not covered?
Well, let me tell you a story. I believe I tell it in The Shadow University because it was part of...
I'm loving these stories, Harvey.
The stories are fabulous. let me tell you a story of... I did a tour of the country, visiting campuses. Mm-hmm. I visited a college called Hamline University. I believe it was in Indiana or Illinois, somewhere in the Midwest. And I attended a freshman orientation. Mm-hmm. Now listen to this. This was a freshman orientation. The administrators, the deans and the deanettes and the deputy assistant deans and deanettes and the third deputy assistant deans and deanettes lined the students up according to their skin hues.
Oh, boy.
The blonde, blue-eyed white folks were at one end. The darkest African Americans whose bloodlines had not yet mixed with any of the whites on the other end. And the exercise was you had to tell how your race affected your success in life up until that point. I thought it was the most demeaning thing that one could imagine. Demeaning. I thought to myself, they could do the same about sexual orientation. They could do the same about religion. They could do the same about national origin. It would be demeaning no matter what.
Yeah.
And the students actually verbalized how their race had either been a plus or a minus.
They did it.
They did. And I thought it was so demeaning, it just confirmed all of my distaste for this kind of approach.